Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Document Excellence Group webinar. We have launched a new series of webinars aimed at providing thought leadership, informative educational content, client case studies, and product demos. And joining us today, we have Steve Meinl from Draftable to talk to us about the power of building with legal teams, what we can expect now from our legal solutions providers. Because of course, it's not just about a transactional relationship anymore, it's much more how do we work in partnership. So I'm going to hand over to Steve to walk us through it. If you have any questions though, feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we'll come to them at the end. So thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Well, good afternoon, everybody, on a hopefully where you are sunny afternoon. As was mentioned, my name's Steve Meinl from Draftable. I'll do a bit more of a fuller introduction shortly, but I've got about 45 minutes today to talk to you really about that keyword partnership and how you should work with your partners and what you expect from your technology solutions provider. So I've got a brief PowerPoint I'm going to run through. A lot of this is my observations, and I'm going to do a very short demonstration towards the end of the session just to put in practice some of the things I'm going to discuss. So just to give you a bit of an agenda for today, I'm going to spend sort of 6 key things. The first thing I want to cover is how the conversations have changed, or more importantly, should be changing, and why those standards for technology solution providers should also be changing. I'm also going to go into sort of 5 key questions which are worth asking every solutions provider you're either working with or planning to work with in the future, and almost give you a sort of a framework when you're having those discussions. I'm going to sort of deviate slightly and also just very briefly cover the modern adding questions. This is something we get asked a lot, so I thought it's worth covering that at this stage. Then I'm going to put into what a good solution provider should look like and what that relationship partner should be. Then I'm going to very briefly cover is if everything we talk about today and you decide actually I want to look at a new solutions provider, how do we do that? How do we evaluate what's good? How do we run a pilot? And just some general thoughts and process on how that should work. And then finally, I'm just going to go a bit into Draftable, who we are, and how we have put into practice a lot of the things I'm going to discuss. So hopefully that's all good for an agenda. So let me introduce myself in a bit more detail. So my name's Steve Meinl. I work for Draftable in the EMEA region and Middle East North Africa region. I've been in legal technology for 20 odd years. So I've seen lots of changes, lots of things happened. And I've worked really with lots of different teams. So document productions, legal IT, innovation teams, knowledge teams, all around the world. And we try to work it out, but I reckon I've done hundreds of solution provider evaluations and run multiple pilots. So everything I'm going to cover today is really my opinion or my thought process. It may not be 100% accurate, but it's my view. So please feel free to agree with me or contradict me as we go through in the comments and for questions. I'm also going to very briefly cover who we are as Draftable. For those who don't know, Draftable really should be seen as the comparison solution. We've been in the marketplace for about 13 years. We started off selling or offering online PDF comparison. Then we evolved, and through feedback and people coming to us, we created our legal comparison solution, which was about 3 years ago. Came out to market about 3 years ago. And from there, we've now got over 1,300, 1,400 clients using us. And a lot of what we'll cover today is how the solution's evolved, why it's evolved, and how it's evolved. But predominantly, it's because of partnerships we have with prospective and existing clients. So that's a brief introduction myself. If you want to reach out to me after this, please feel free. I'm happy to answer any questions and have any conversations we need to. So I'm going to give you a bit of an ask today. So I'm going to cover quite a few different things. Some of these things you may know, some things you may not know. But really, what I want to do is anything's useful today, take it back and apply it to every technology supplier you use or planning to use. And look, feel free to reach out to me if you come back with any thoughts or processes after you've spoken to your current or future supplier. So, as we mentioned at the start, the conversation basis with your solution provider has changed. or more importantly, should change. And the question is, why is that changing and why should we be driving that change in force? Well, let's do a bit of revision and see where we are at the moment. So some of you may agree, most of you may agree, some of you may not agree, that legacy technology has really struggled to keep change with the pace of the market. Okay. And this has really happened probably in the last 5, 6, 7 years, where that pace has really slowed down. And there's a number of reasons. I can give you hundreds of different reasons, but predominantly they fall under 3 key headings, in my opinion. And that is technology consolidation. So there may have been 2 or 3 legacy products doing the same thing. They've been consolidated into one, rather than look at creating a new solution driven for today's market. There's been lots of mergers and acquisitions, which we probably all know about. And that really slows everything up. That's the focuses of the business. Where one firm may be driving things forward, they get merged or acquired, things fall back. Again, really slows things up. And then private equity. Although that speeds some things up, what it does speed up is return of investment. And again, some of the things which suffer because of that is resource put into things like development. So I think we can all agree that's what's happening within the marketplace. The other big thing is we're in an AI revolution. So most of you are either aware of, have been looking at, will be looking at, or have implemented some kind of AI technology within the organization. The problem is most of that investment is shifting into AI. Fantastic, great. We need to look into AI. How can it benefit the business? How can it help things? But we still need those traditional rule-based tools. And unfortunately, those business critical tools haven't moved on or aren't moving on as much as they should be. So the feedback I get on a regular basis, again, I've put them into subheadings. This is probably things you're aware of as well. There may be additional ones. Please, again, put those in the chat if you wish to. But the things I generally hear is there are recurring outages and poor support for existing solutions. That to me is unacceptable, and that needs to be looked at quite forthrightly. People I speak to find, their end users, they find daily complaints. In many ways, the best solution you won't hear about. This is occasionally, this is fantastic. It should be used as a tool, should sit there, be used, and no complaints. Another thing we're finding more and more now is there's those horrible, unexpected, or excessive price increases. Again, technology moves on. Investment needs to be put into solutions to drive that technology forward. Therefore, there are some expectations of price increases, but you shouldn't be excessive price increases, and there should be a return or value proposition to those increases, i.e. the solutions move forward, there's new features, there's new functionality, and there's a respectable and expected price increase, which is spoken about throughout the whole partnership. The other thing which really is quite personal to myself is the slow time it takes to put forward promised improvements. If improvements are discussed, promised, roadmapped, they should move forward nowadays with technology very, very quickly. Yes, there may be some delays, and that's acceptable if they're spoken about and you're informed about it, but they shouldn't just be delayed and pushed back and pushed back. And then finally, probably one we hear reasonably often is with the slow change in technology, some solutions out there look old, feel old, aren't intuitive, and then there's that perception from the users, this is old technology, what are you doing to us? You're not helping us. What can you do? So that's really a bit of a revision of where we are currently and how we need to really look at these and move these things forward. So conversation's changed, and it's no longer about what's possible. It's about what your solution provider is willing to do. Do not accept the word can't. Okay. So I'm going to cover that now in a bit of detail. Obviously, Draftable, predominantly comparison software. So I'm referred to comparison software as an example, but you can probably broaden this out to any of your solution provider solutions out there. So there's going to be lots of fives going on, but I've given 5 questions which I think are really worth asking your current or future provider. And again, take these away, think about them. You may have additional ones, fantastic, but let's go with these 5 at this stage. So, question number 1. Will it sit inside the tools we already use? We have quite a busy environment. So we have things like your DMS, iManage, NetDocs, Epona, all those kind of things. Word, Outlook, the office environment. You'll have daily workflows for your team. And the question is, will it sit within those tools? So probably those who have been involved in deployments know the switching tools does take an effort. There are barriers put up by users. And that's understandable, because if you look at it, every extra application, every extra standalone window, every extra login, it's really another frustration for users. And therefore, they'll put up the barriers and refuse to adopt or put negatives when adoption, and the adoption of the new technology or new solution is severely impacted. Therefore, what you should be looking at, and you should challenge your providers with this, is we want it to work within our environments we want. So whether that's our native add-ins for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, whether it's with our iManage, NetDocs, SharePoint environment. So we want to be able to give our users that security or that safety of working in the environment they wish to. Some people want to work in their iManage environment, fantastic. Some people want to work in their NetDocs environment, fantastic. Some people don't want to leave their Outlook environment. Why should they? We shouldn't have to force them. That's where they want to work. They should be able to use a solution from there. And again, we should never put demands on the users to use a solution in a specific way. We should work with them and give them the option to work in a way which works best for themselves. Whether that is when we're loading files in comparison software that we want to drag and drop them in, right click, hotkeys, or put an automated workflow in there. That should all be an option to ensure adoption is full and people use the solution. And also on that, we don't want to force lawyers, as I mentioned, out of the application they're already in. We don't want to open up hundreds of applications during the day, lose where we are. We want to focus on the work we want to do. So the question we're going to ask is, how many entry points does your tool have? If they come back and say, in comparison world, oh, it's really easy, just launch the application and click compare. Actually, no, that's not easy. That's an easy get out for the solutions provider. What it isn't doing is working or fitting the workflow of your environment. And adoption could or will fail on this. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, how do we handle the modern add-ins? So this is quite a big deployment shift. So I'll cover this in a bit more detail shortly, but every Word and Outlook add-in your team supports today is probably the COM VSTO plugin installed per machine. We all know, we don't know the times yet, we all know that Microsoft direction is moving towards those web add-ins, and that involves deploying centrally through the Microsoft Admin Center. So really on this, what you should be looking at with your solution provider is, if it's not available yet, there should be a clear and public-facing roadmap for moving to those web add-ins. Again, what you don't want is a hard stop. You want to discuss how they're going to transition from those existing COM add-ins to the new versions. Can we deploy this using the admin center rather than per machine MSI? And also, what will be your cross-platform support, whether it's Windows, Mac, Word for Web, mobile, etc. And again, we'll look into this in a bit more detail very, very shortly. So question 3, I have to mention AI. It's a hot topic. So it really is a question of, does your solution work with AI? Not do you have AI, but really, does your output work with the AI we're already using? Okay. So the reason I say that, and this is really focused on the comparison world, that's where we come from, is we understand that, as I mentioned, you're either investing in, will be investing in, or have invested in AI assistants. So what you want to do is actually look at the tools you have, and do they support or produce outputs that the AI tool can interpret, investigate, challenge, question. Okay. So what you need to look for is things like structured outputs that they can actually examine. You also want your supplier to have a clear position on AI. Is it used? Where is it used? How is it used? And also, which we often forget, is actually it's not used, and that's a deliberate reason why. And the comparison world, there's quite a serious reason for that. Is we don't want interpretations, we want factual understandings of comparisons documents. Please challenge your solution provider if they use words like transformative, revolutionary, all those great marketing words. There's no substance in that. You want to find out where they stand and what's happening. And also, we need to look at a honesty about the accuracy of the AI outputs. We know that when we look at these business critical tools and comparison, highly business critical, in the legal market, reliability, accuracy is key. It really is a hard flaw. We don't want to deviate from that. So just to put that in a bit more detail, if we look at a comparison tool, if we take out a standard red line from comparison, it's all noise to the AI solution. It really is. It can't work it out. You know, strike through versus new text through moves. It just doesn't distinguish it into the model. So what you need, and this is what we put into our solution, is AI ready red line labels, which the model can reason the change. It doesn't create the change, it reasons over the change. So on this, what I'm going to say to you is ask every solutions provider, what does your output look like to a machine? And wait to the answers. And hopefully they won't give you that marketing, revolutionary or transformative view. So question number 4 already. How responsive is support? And we don't just mean the SLAs on this. So support is one of those very difficult questions to say, because every single solutions provider you speak to say, are supported excellent? And it should be. The support is a key factor. But really, we need to challenge that. So what does the escalation procedure look like? More and more firms are utilizing AI for first fix help desk, which is fine. If it's a minor problem, AI can resolve it very, very quickly, very, very accurately. Fantastic. Great. We love that. Does it brilliantly. However, the particular problem, issue, may not be an off-the-shelf problem. We want to speak to a human. We've got a bit more of an issue. So the first thing we need to look at is how quickly can we speak to a human? Do we get a human response? Do we have to wait hours and hours? Do we miss phone calls? Is it email? How do they talk to us? We also understand things can't be fixed immediately sometimes. Okay, that we understand that's the world. But if we've promised a time to fix, can we work to that time? Because the solution provider will promise a time to fix. You'll promise a time to fix to maybe the user of the issue or the business unit. And if it changes, people need to know. We need to set expectations. The other thing we need to look at is solutions now aren't just defined as in an off-the-shelf solution. We talked about that. Click on compare. Does it compare? Yes. Actually, we need to look at the environment. Does the engineer, do they understand the iManage world, the NetDocs world, the Microsoft world? They need to know this. Do they understand your environment? And that's really takes into an important factor is if you speak to a human, as ideally as possible, you want to keep communication with that same engineer, that same person. You don't have to keep on repeating things, going back and saying, oh, this is our environment again. You want to, where possible, keep that engineer who understands your environment, understands the issue, and can work with you to resolve that. So how do you evaluate that? Well, that it's relatively straightforward, to be honest. Look at a comparable firm. Ask for a P1 ticket from a comparable firm. What did that response time look like? What were the responses? How long was the time to fix? What kind of communication was there? Also see where the support team are based. So I'll take Draftable example. We work on 3 regions, APAC, the US and Europe. Because of that, we offer support in all those 3 regions. And therefore, we can ensure coverage in the relevant time zone. Sounds minor, but actually, if you have to wait 12 hours just to speak to somebody, that's an unacceptable delay in a critical business tool. It's also great, we're in an industry which is fantastic. Everybody knows people. Speak to current customers. Excuse me. Speak to current customers. Ask about their escalations. Also, challenge that supplier. What is their customer success scores? What's their NPS scores? What proportion of their customers renew? firms who are confident will have no wires giving out that data. So challenge people on that. So question 5, and this is really, what do contracts look like? I've worked through various different contract views where we used to do multi-year lock-ins, but these really are, excuse me one second, these really are a benefit to the solutions provider. These aren't a benefit to yourselves. So what we need to look at is, if the vendor offers by default 3-year auto lock-in contract, probably a double-digit annual price escalator, ask why. Why am I locked in for 3 years? The reason you probably are is actually protects the solution provider. They're no longer accountable. You're locked in. They can do what they like. They can make promises and don't fulfill those promises. If you're on a yearly contract, you live and die by saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, if you don't perform, you don't hit the required standards, it's up to you. You lose that client. That is why we do the 12-month contract. It's basically allows us to prove where we are and what we're doing. So really now what we should be looking at is 12 months term as standard. Obviously some businesses, for budgetary reasons, whatever it may be, should allow you, and we do as well, commit to longer if that requires. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. There should also be really transparent pricing. This is the price you pay. We're not going to pop in midterm price increases. This is where we are. Obviously, as I mentioned before, there is investment in the product that has to be, you have to look at that and pass some costs on price increases onto the end user. That's understandable, but it should be discussed. It should be capped, maybe. It should also be explained. And also, there should be a return of that investment. So if the product's improved, there's new functions, there's new features, absolutely fine. If the product has stayed still, why should there be a price increase? And finally, we all understand things don't necessarily work out all the time. There should be a nice, easy exit path which doesn't punish you for leaving. So that's one thing we should look at when we look at the contracts. So I mentioned in those 5 questions that there's sort of the modern add-in, which we get asked a lot. So I'm going to go through this relatively briefly. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. Microsoft have been very open that they're replacing those legacy add-ins with web-based ones. They may not have been so astute about when that's going to happen. It does change slightly, but it is going to happen. It's starting to happen, and we need to plan ahead for that. Microsoft have been absolutely clear, web add-ins are the future. There should now no longer be any more investment into legacy.com add-ins. Okay. There's various reasons for that, and we look on the slide on the right-hand side. There's loads of benefits. The install method will be centralized via M365 admin, multiple platforms. Updates can now be pushed instantly. The security model is sandboxed, and we know the direction is active investment rather than maintenance. So again, going back to the questions, what is the solutions provider roadmap, policy, thoughts on where they're going with the replacement of the legacy add-ins with the web-based ones? That's great. So why am I making a fuss over this? Why have I done 2 separate slides on it? Well, very simply, the shift is a real benefit to each business unit. We're looking at centralized deployment. You can now push out updates throughout the whole environment rather than having to reach out and touch every machine. Think about onboarding a starter. Takes minutes now rather than having to do a specific desktop visit. We offer the ability now, or we'll offer the ability to do cross-platform by default. So, mobile, Word for the web, whatever it may be. We're no longer going to have to answer that question is, that feature isn't available on your laptop today. I'm not a security expert, but it is a simpler security story. It's sandboxed by design. There's assurances to InfoSec. It's going to be easier to pass procurement, audit, etc. So, and again, another great benefit, and probably the most important thing, it's future-proof. The investment is going into web add-ins. Your solutions provider should be replicating that story. So again, going back to 5, the 5 questions you should be asking your solution provider on the add-in side is, do you have a roadmap? Are you doing anything at the moment, or will be doing anything? Can I deploy your tool through the Microsoft Admin Center for those reasons we said, pushing out security? Quite important is, how long will your legacy solution stay supported in the transition? Because we're not going to do a hard stop. We want to know, will your legacy be supported, and then we can gradually, or how we work through our deployment to the new add-ins. Will it from day one cover Mac support, web, mobile from day one? And then more importantly as well is, we're moving towards these new add-ins. Is there going to be parity to where we are today? Are we going to miss anything from version 1? If so, why? Because we don't want to do that. We don't want to go backwards. We don't want to say to users, you haven't got that feature or functionality now. No. We want to ensure we have parity with the new solution. So that's the sort of question you should be asking. But what does good actually look like? So we need to see what's going to be a healthy relationship. And I use the word relationship. And also warning signs. What are the red flags? What do we need to be careful of? Well, these are things I would suggest. And again, you may have other ones. Please feel free to mention those. But first thing we should be looking at, feature shipping weeks, not years. Modern technology means that changes can happen within tools very, very quickly. So there should be real named improvements quickly and efficiently. Yes, it has to be scoped, has to be implemented, but it should be out there in the public. There should be release notes. This should be driven by customer asks. As a solutions provider, and Draftable, this is where we sit, is we don't put things into solutions we think, oh, that'd be really cool. We actually listen to our clients, say, how do you work? Would this benefit to you? How can this work in the solution? And put those in there. So it's co-creation. We're more than happy to discuss what our clients have said to us, what we put in the system. It is a relationship, it's a partnership, and it will benefit all our clients. Support. Respond to your time zone. Try and get the same person to follow through that issue. Quick first response. Take responsibility for the result and push that through. Transparent pricing. 12 months terms available. Let's not put in midterm escalators. Let's have a disciplined renewal process. Let's work together. And be honest, not everything we spoke about may be possible. Absolutely not a problem. When something can't be done, as long as it's explained why, that's what we want. We don't want people going, yeah, we could probably do it. No, it's not possible. These are the reasons why. We all know where we stand. So again, set the expectations. So, red flags, what should we look for? Probably more important. Roadmap items that slip year after year. I have seen this far too often. Great on the roadmap. Renewal comes a year later. What's happened to that new feature functionality? Oh yeah, still on our roadmap. Next year, still on the roadmap. That is unacceptable. You should be informed, yes, this will be when it's going to come into place, or no, we can't actually do that. This is the reason why. Support tickets that stall. These tools are business critical. We don't want these support tickets at all. Somebody should take responsibility, respond fast, and keep that going. We don't want these engineers changing mid-thread. You have to go all the way back to the start, explain the problem, explain the environment, go through it, and all the way back again. Happens far too often. Silence or no real positioning on the modern add-ins. Be cautious. Be really cautious. Multi-year contracts are the commercial offer. Yes, there is a commercial sometimes benefit, as they'll say, for the first year is a really cheap price. That's actually fine. Look at what happens on the discount for year 2, year 3. Multi-year contracts are for the benefit predominantly of the solution provider. Also, and this goes back to one of the first slides I said about mergers and acquisitions, private equity, challenge your provider. Challenge them and say, what's the acquisition rumor? What's happening with the acquisitions? If the vendor's commercial future is uncertain and they won't say so, be cautious. And I'm going to use a real life example of this where one particular client of mine, they made a very conscious decision to leave a particular supplier. They went to a new supplier, really happy. 3 months later, that supplier was taken over by the original supplier. They went back to the original product. They basically wasted money, time, effort, and a lot of disappointment in the user base. So yeah, challenge. Everything I'm saying is challenge your solutions provider. Challenge them to see what they're going to ask and answer. So everything I said today is how you challenge the provider, what you should do. Let's red flags. So maybe a case you say, actually, for a particular tool, for say comparisons, we want to evaluate the new provider. So how do we do that efficiently? Now, what I'm going to say now isn't necessarily the right way for everybody, but this is from my experience on how we've had the most successful pilots for organizations. So again, there may be some deviation, not a problem, but let's just use this as a template. So 5 principles, really trying to cut that decision time in half. First thing is we do not want long pilots. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it has to go through IT, then it goes through users. But in an ideal world, 2, 4, 6 weeks is more than enough to actually evaluate it. If it's an open-ended pilot, it's never going to close. People will not use it. They're busy. They won't give feedback. It will just sit in there on their application, on their laptop, not used. And then the whole thing just falters and it's wasted the user's time, your time in looking at deployment. Try and do a real user environment. I demonstrate Draftable on a regular basis. I demonstrate for my documents. Is that a real life environment? Probably not. So yeah, don't put it into a sandbox group. Get users out there using it. Put in difficult documents. See how they find it. What works best for their workflow. Different users may come back with different views or different ways of working. Yeah, get out there. Yes, you use it properly. Feedback's really useful. Let's not wait till the end. Let's get a weekly structured feedback. That could be between the solutions provider, the team, a champion, somebody who hasn't had a great experience. Let's share those notes. Let's see what it is. This is often the case we find with pilots is if they wait till the end, we suddenly get feedback saying, yeah, 2 people just didn't like it, didn't work for them. Actually, it was a configuration tweak we needed, or they didn't quite understand they had to do it this particular way. Let's resolve those very quickly. Let's get the feedback and keep it moving forward. It's also good as how are you going to measure success? Look at adoption rate, the number of complaints being reduced, time saving. Agree 3, 4, 5 measurable success criteria from the start and see where you hit on those. Really useful. And again, speak to some other organizations. You may find either yourselves or they have already set a sort of template for how they look at success. Utilize it, not a problem. This is quite an interesting one, and this is from my view is a go no go date in the contract. What we often find is we set a 4-week pilot. We do the pilot, we do 1, 2, 3, and 4 really well. We get to week 4, they come back and say, yeah, it's really good, we want to go with it, fantastic. Right, we now need to look at the contract, the terms and conditions, the logistics of how we're going to implement it. Yep, that's fine, we can do all that. By the way, the pilot's finished, we're going to take that tool away from the users. The users get upset, it gets really quite messy sometimes. So really, through 1, 2, 3, and 4, we should in the background be looking at the contract, looking at the pricing model, looking at the SLAs, looking at where we are. So when we come to 5, yep, we've agreed, we've committed. Actually, yeah, let's go with it. Let's not take the tool away from the users who've been piloting it. They can just go live straight away. Nice and seamless, really smooth. And in an ideal world, that's how we should be looking at a pilot. So I've sort of done a lot of hypotheticals, for want of a better word. So let's look a bit more practice on Draftable. And we've built it with lawyers in practice. As I said at the start, is we created Draftable or launched about 3 years ago. We did not build it by ourselves. We spoke to legal firms, particular lawyers. We worked very closely with them to create the solution. As more people use Draftable, we built it out and built it out. We put new features and functionality in there, which isn't available in the market, to basically provide a solution that the users want. So, as I said, legal teams asked us, we built it. As I mentioned before, no long roadmaps, no, well, we can't do it yet, we can't do it yet. We were asked, and 3 key features, redline in email, departures table, and AI ready in redline, which I've already mentioned. We noticed there was a big gap in the market for these, so we built them from scratch. We scoped them, we created them, we worked with the clients and said, look, this is what we put together, tweaked it, worked it out well, released it for the benefit of every user's Draftable. And a little bit of a quote, I put quotes in there. I just like to say, best things in sliced bread, this is. It works. because we've listened to what the users want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a very quick demonstration of two of those features we're asked to create and put into the solution. Takes a couple of minutes. It's the departures table and redlining email. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for one moment. I'm just going to bring up Draftable. And if I share my screen, hopefully you can see all Draftable application. If there's anybody who uses Draftable, this will be familiar for yourselves. If you don't use Draftable, this is our application. From this screen, we can drag and drop right-click documents from any source, whether it's Outlook, Word, whether it's from our DMS, iManage, NetDocs, Opponent, SharePoint, drag and drop, right-click, PDFs, Words, Excel, PowerPoint, mixture, doesn't matter, all in the same application. So for the purposes, though, I'm going to run a comparison. For those who use comparisons tool have seen it, this isn't going to be too much of a surprise. But for those who haven't, what we simply do is compare two documents and see the changes. So this is really a traditional, if I can use that word, comparison. So we've run the comparison through. We're hit with our summary page. Just go do a 3-page view so we can see the original document and the modified document. So historically, traditionally, what we've gone through, we can go through all the changes. We can run a changes report. We can see every change in the document. With our solution, we can tag it. We can make notes really well. So this was how it went out to the market. We then spoke to a couple of clients who said, when you've done a comparison, what do you do? And generally, the outcome was, we sit down, we write a whole thing about all the changes, we put it all together. I then have to discuss with my team. So I send them the original document, the modified document, the redline PDF document, my report. We print it all off. We all sit down around the table, discuss it. And the question was, is this efficient? The answer was no. So what we created was we added another line into output. So we can put into redline PDF or Word. We can do the change pages only. We can do track changes. We can do an AI ready redline. But the one I'm going to show today is our departures table. So what we created was a Word document. Just going to open up my Word there, which looks at all that document, looks at all the changes, but in this case, it puts them into context. So rather than just have line of everything's changed, it's put a reference point there, definition, preamble. It's put the change in place. It's done it in context. So these 2 columns or 3 columns are not where my expertise is. I should not be spending time doing this. I probably do anyway. But where I should be spending my expertise, where my value adding is, what I'm employed to do is my review notes and commercial impact. Obviously, as a Word document, we can change those headings. But what I can simply do now is write my review notes, my commercial impact. I have a source of truth, send that to my team. We can sit down and review the document sensibly, round to open up multiple copies of things, get confused, one source of truth. And of course, with Draftable, what we can do is we can save that to our DMS. We can email it in the body of an email. On the body, we can save it and do whatever. So that's the redline departures table. The feedback is really, truthfully phenomenal on this, because this is what a lot of people are doing on a day-to-day basis, but haven't created themselves, which is inefficient 1-2 hours of their time. So that's the departures table. And we talked about we can put that into the body of an email, which is absolutely fine. And that came to another conversation with users, which came to the email functionality. So we were asked by a specific user, can we redline an email? Well, actually, no, you can't at the moment. But would you like to? Yeah, we do. So the 2 scenarios we got were, number 1, my team member has sent me this email. I need to review it before it goes to the client. So what I normally do is excuse me a second as I try to find my mouse, I would click on reply if I could find my mouse. There we go, click on reply. And then I go mad with fonts, highlights, changing things, moving things around. Not really useful, not very effective, and quite messy, really. So now what I want to do is actually redline it. So very simply, with the modern add-ins, we can simply click on redline. I want to redline my change, and I can start reviewing the document. So actually, I don't want to put that line in there. I made a mistake there. And I just want to change that to over here. So you can see there, I'm moving the document around, and we can see on the right-hand side, I've redlined the email. Happy with all those changes, I can then simply apply to my email. I can then send that back to the author of the email. So we'll just assume I've done that. I get that back. Oh, great. I can see Steve's reviewed the email. Fantastic. I just want to accept or reject those changes. So I can simply click on redline, accept and reject changes. And no major surprise here. What I can simply do is go through, accept, reject those changes, create a fresh email or apply this to the email, and then I've got a nice, clean email to send to the third party. Really, really useful tool. So that's how we started. And then we got through another question. That's great, but sometimes we talk to a third party, and in this scenario, we've worked on a contract. We now just actually come to a couple of terms. Rather than email the whole documents backwards and forwards, all we're doing is cut and pasting the relevant terms in there. So what's happened here is Piotr has sent to me, hey Steve, thanks for the email, please see the changes below. What are the changes below? So now all I can simply do is click on redline, compare against an earlier email in the chain. The system will then look at the previous email in the chain, and it'll come up with me and tell me what the changes are from what Piotr has just sent me to the previous email. So we created that. Really powerful, and I can accept and reject the changes. Nice, clean, efficient way of doing this. And then talking about that code creation, we're asked, actually, that's great, but often there's a massive email trail, and I want to go back to the first email in the trail to see where we've ended up. Not a problem. We very simply, within a week or so, added the change baseline rule. I do apologize, my mouse keeps on disappearing. Change baseline rule. I can see all the emails in the chain. Go back to the very first one, select this email, and then I sometimes pause for laughter for this bit. We found after 6 months, we've actually got back to the original status of where we were from day one. So this is really how we can redline an email. So the reason I'm showing these two things is they're a great example of how you should work as a partnership. How are you using the solution now? Great. How would you want to improve it? Fantastic. What's the situation? What's the scenario? Great. Let's put that into the system. Let's put it out there. Let's tweak it. Fantastic. We have a great solution for you. So that's draftable, redline in email, and the departures table. So hopefully that's covered that nice and neatly. So let me just come up to bring back the presentation. And then hopefully you can see my PowerPoint again. And then what we'll do is we're going to move on to a unveiling. So what I've talked about is comparison tools. And I said about how we co-create with our users. So we put a comparison tool out there, 3 years, feedback was fantastic. I mentioned we do redline in email. We look at documents, we create the departures table. So we're asked by several clients, that's great. We've got these documents, we've changed them, we've done what we need to do with them. We're a bit worried about sending them out. Can we send out clean documents? So we created a metadata tool, which is draftable clean. So this really handles that metadata risk before anything is sent out. Firms ask for it, we built it with them. So the big reveal is draftable clean. So you'll be pleased to know we've got about 1.5 minute video. So I'll take a pause from speaking and I'll run that video through. So let me just click that. So hopefully you can all hear it, but let me run that through.
Built with lawyers, Draftable Clean removes hidden metadata before documents leave the firm. Quickly, reliably, and in a way that fits how lawyers...
Nope, do apologise, it's paused.
...already work. It works in 2 places. Inside Outlook at the moment of sending, and as a desktop application for closer review before anything moves. In the Outlook add-in, prepare your email as you always do. Recipients, subject line, attachments. Draftable Clean works alongside you as you compose. Attach a file, and Draftable Clean scans it automatically. At a glance, you can see if anything needs attention, including tracked changes and comments. When it's time to send, you just hit send. But cleaning isn't one size fits all. Your administrators can configure different cleaning profiles for different contexts, including setting a profile for external recipients and another for internal email recipients. And if tracked changes or comments are present, one clear prompt appears before the email goes out, so nothing slips past. You can rename attachments, reorder attachments, drop an attachment list into the email body, or convert files to PDF, then send, knowing every supported attachment has been cleaned. Not every document goes through Outlook. Some work moves through collaboration platforms or shared folders in your DMS. For those workflows, there's the draftable Clean Desktop application. Bring files in by drag and drop, browse locally, or pull directly from the document management systems your firm already uses. Supports iManage, NetDocuments, and SharePoint. Files appear in a list with automatic risk ratings. Expand any file to see exactly what was found. Choose the cleaning profile that suits the situation. Draftable Clean removes the metadata you've selected. You can rename and reorder files, convert them to PDF, then save the cleaned versions or push them straight to email, using the defaults your firm has configured for subject, body text, and attachment lists. With Draftable, you get responsive support from a global team with 24/6 coverage, a 95% plus satisfaction rating, and a product shaped by the firms who use it. ISO 27001 and SOC 2 certified, GDPR compliant, and trusted by the firms who helped shape it. Fast cleaning, safe sending from Draftable.
So you're all very lucky there, because you're probably the first few number of people who actually seen that. We have shown a few of our existing clients, but that's our new solution out there, and already we're getting positive feedback and working with clients on just improving and really building more functionality of that solution. So that's our Draftable Clean solution. So let me give you 3 takeaways. So the main thing is it's no longer about what's possible. It's what your solution provider is willing to do. Custom work should not be slow. AI has changed the economics of this. So building for one firm is no longer slow or expensive process. Changes should be able to happen within the solution very quickly. Functionality should be added very quickly. Can't is not a choice. If the solution provider says that's not possible, or without reasoning, they're choosing not to help you. And that's a big red flag. And then finally, should ship in weeks, not years. Customers should be asking for release notes. The standard is to expect, the new standard is to expect from any solution provider release notes, a sensible roadmap, and the promise to hit those dates they put forward. So 5 things really, which hopefully if nothing else lands today, hopefully these 5 things have shown. And that's it. It's not about what's possible. It's about what your solutions provider is willing to do. Every Office add-in in your team support needs a modern add-in in the roadmap. What's their roadmap for putting in a modern add-in? Ask your solutions provider with regards to AI, what does the output look like to a machine? We don't want a 3-year contract unless we necessarily do. We want a 12-month contract with transparent pricing to be the new norm. And then if we put a pilot in place, it should take weeks, not quarters or years. It should be tightly scoped, structured, and there should be feedback on that. So I'll do that in about 45 minutes. I've just gone over that, so do apologize. But hopefully that's covered a lot of the sort of things to look at when you talk about relationship with your solution provider, what to look for and really to see whether you should evaluate your relationship with your solution provider. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. That was a really interesting session. I'm sure you'll all agree. Just checking on whether we have any Q&As come through. So we do have one question, which is, what is an AI-ready red line? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I can cover that sort of very briefly. If the person wants more details, reach out to me. But in the personal time, so what it does is it will create a output, which can then they put into your generative AI tool. So Code Counsel, whatever it may be. And then rather than the AI tool doing the comparison, it takes the output and the machine can read that output. And then you can basically do your questions, your interrogation of those changes in your AI tool. So basically, it gives you a report to take out of the comparison tool, put into your AI solution, and then look at it. So you may save a contract clause. It may then go into your library of contract clauses and look at those. So there is no AI within Draftable, but there's a tool to put that into your relevant AI solution. Hopefully that covers the question. If the person wants to reach out to me, I can do a full demonstration on that as well, depending on their AI solution.
Thank you. Very helpful. We've just had a comment as well come through, not so much a question, but just saying it was a fantastic presentation, which I wholeheartedly agree with and echo. Certainly given us all a lot to think about. Just a bit of a question from me then, while we wait to see if anyone else wants to pop any questions in there. I mean, how do you see these relationships evolving over the next few years? It's obviously quite an interesting market at the moment. There's so much progress going on. And I think we've all come from a position where it was a lot more transactional in the past with our suppliers. Do you see the partnership model working together being a much more important part of the future?
I hope so. And I know that's, so I've been in the industry for 20 years. I joined Draftable about 2.5 years ago. And my ethos is, yes, we should work as partnership. I found Draftable has that same mentality. And to be honest, it's the only way forward. When you're looking at building a solution or additional solutions, such as the clean environment, it's relationship. As a business, we could go off and probably create 3 or 4 new tools, put them out there. They won't succeed because that's not what the users want. We understand that every single organization works differently. So you're not going to fit off the shelf a solution for everybody, but you need to have those ability for the solution to have flexibility to work for how different organizations work. And you only get that from the relationship. My view is, as we know, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on there. A lot of companies have been taken over, will be taken over. I think that relationship is being lost because of that. When you get large organizations with quite a lot of movement of personnel or focus on product solutions where they're going, you lose that relationship. And that's really where companies like ourselves, where we have a good portfolio of solutions, we work close with our clients, and that's where we'll succeed. But we will only succeed if the clients succeed using our tools. Long answer, but hopefully that covered what you the answer.
No, I think that's a really great point. I think it'll be very much a case of watch this space to see how it all evolves. We've just had another question in there as well. What should you include in your success criteria for a product?
If we talk about regarding pilot schemes, there is probably a never-ending list. Generally, the feedback I get is we look at the adoption. So let's just take, for example, you have a 20-user pilot scheme. We can guarantee not everybody will utilize that opportunity to use because they're busy and things. But the good point is there an adoption or pickup? So people start using it and actually say, yeah, I'll use it on a day-to-day basis. So with Draftable, what we often find is they would have the competitor solution and our solution. So one success criteria we look for is, what is your preferred solution, existing or the new one? So that's the key thing. Then we look at things like usability. Has the user found it easy to use? Because often with pilots, there's not much training. It's almost a pick up and play. We try to offer training, but sometimes it's not as much as they require. Can they pick up players? So is it usability? Does it do the functionality? Does it do what you want it to do? Have you found it to be a more efficient way of working? Can you see a deployment within the organization helping your business unit, yourself, and your organization? So those are the kind of things we want to look at. Obviously, you will get people, which is really good, to who say it's not working for them. So what we often like to have actually within a pilot group is those who are really pro change. Yeah, we really wanted a solution. Maybe people who've seen the solution or say Draftable in another environment. Yeah, great to have those on board. But also those people who are more reluctant to change. Because they're really useful to have those people and actually say, yeah, we understand there's reluctance to change. Try it and work with them and see what their feedback is. So yeah, there's lots of things we can look at the criteria for success. But I would say user adoption, how's it compared with the current solution? Is it used? Often we find no feedback can be quite positive as well, because you don't want to be bombarded. But actually in a pilot, you do want people to actually spend 5-10 minutes to fill out a user form to say, yeah, this is what we enjoyed. As a business, we have customer success team. So if anybody ever has a pilot with us, we can bring on board customer success team. They can put together a templated questionnaire to send to your users if required, working with yourselves to say, yeah, these are the sort of things we should be asking for.
Thanks, Steve. And just a final question, just conscious of time here, is someone saying they find web add-ins don't work the same as legacy apps. Certainly we know that. Are you saying we will have no choice of these changes regardless? I think that's probably quite a popular question.
Yeah.
It's certainly a difficult thing for people.
Yeah. So it's a very fluid area. Microsoft have put out there that they are moving towards the web add-ins. There have been quite a few date changes to when that's happening, when they're going to cut off support to the traditional add-ins. I don't know the latest. It's not tomorrow, so don't worry, anybody. It's quite a way away. But yes, you've hit the nail. The problem is with the new add-ins, some tools out there, they've put them in because they had to, without the full resource going into it, without the testing. So yes, there are problems with some organizations and some tools out there with the new add-ins. That is more a solution provider issue. We've worked very close with ours. There are still some things we can't control. There is a delay. You have to activate it on the Microsoft Store. It takes 24 hours or 48 hours to become active. But yeah, it's, I would say, from what I understand, is there will be no choice. Eventually, the .com support will be going when Microsoft finally launch it. So no need to panic, anybody. But now's the time to start planning ahead, thinking about it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking at new laptop deployments or what it may be. Start thinking about the add-ins. There's also benefits to the users as well, actually. I don't know about yourself. I have so many add-ins on my office environment. The .com ones do take a little while to sometimes load everything up. You'll get speeder. With the new add-ins, it's faster. Everything's faster and better as well. But yeah, control is the most important thing. Structure and control and moving across to those new add-ins.
Thank you. And that, I think, leads us on actually quite nicely to saying that this is a topic that we will continue to discuss going forward. We started those discussions at last year's Document Excellence Day. I'm sure we'll continue it throughout this year because we all work in the Microsoft Word environment. We will all be affected by Microsoft's direction of travel on this. But I think that's pretty much all we have time for. So thank you very much, Steve, for your time today. It was a really interesting session. We'll get this recording up on the website as soon as possible and also send out the slides that Steve used as well. Of course, as a membership organization, we do want to reflect what's interesting and useful to our members. So if there is something you would like to see at an upcoming webinar or indeed at the Document Excellence Day, please let us know. We are currently working on the programming for both of those throughout the rest of this year. So let us know. But thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.